Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into my podcast, Xena, Life as a Dominatrix. This is episode 31. This will be aired on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023. Today's topic, Storytime, Part 4. These stories are in my book, Xena, Life as a Dominatrix, which is found on Amazon. Just wanted to plug that in. And this is all from Chapter 12. Before I begin reading, I just wanted to note that I do have a Venmo page. The link is in each and every of my podcast episode. Tips are appreciated, but they're not obligated. So thank you very much. So let me turn to Chapter 12. Parties. I chose this chapter because I like to reminisce and remember the past and how wild the parties were. There were some positives and there were some negatives, but in all honesty, it was all a blur. So, okay, parties. My parties were all a blur. It felt like it was all a dream. This sums it up. My parties were so fucking wild. Timeline. Public parties, which were held from June of 2006 to July of 2007 at Spot 6. We called it the Naughty Spot. Public parties, December of 2006 to May of 2008. We called it the Kinky Playground at Kinetic Playground in Chicago. Then, private parties. Bondage Night Chicago at a downtown dungeon from 2008 to 2012. Then, we moved Bondage Night Chicago at our dungeon in Chicago from 2012 to 2015. Then, I just stopped throwing parties in 2015. So, I was almost at a 10-year mark. So started in 2006 and then just stopped in 2015. So a little bit about the clubs, not reading from the book, but at Spot 6. Spot 6 was a club in Chicago. It was on North Clark Street in Wrigleyville. And the parking was disastrous, just absolutely horrible. There are neighboring parking lots in Wrigleyville, but usually on the weekends, because the parties were on a Saturday, on the third Saturdays to be specific. But the parking lots would all be crowded with Wrigleyville Cubby fans getting drunk, and that neighborhood, it still has a problem with parking. Yeah. But people would say, oh yeah, it took me half an hour or 45 minutes to find a parking spot, but we're here. So that's total devotion, and that was so awesome. These people would come from the suburbs or neighboring states to come to the parties, and so they're like, we came all this way, we're not going to let we're not going to let no parking stop us. We're going to find a parking spot, damn it. The events at Kinetic Playground has a history. Let's see, I think it was in a previous location in Chicago in the Uptown neighborhood, and bands such as Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin, I believe, performed there in the 60s, and then they relocated on West Lawrence, and luckily for us, there was a parking lot, so we didn't have to look for parking, which was great. And those parties were pretty wild as well. It was neat because it was a stage, a performance where I could have different performers on the stage and then the DJ on the stage and do demos on the stage. So that was pretty cool. Regarding the downtown dungeon in Chicago, there was a dungeon on West Lake Street in downtown, and no parking lot, and it was also a bad situation for people to find parking, especially downtown. But people were definitely devoted, and would look for parking for quite some time, and then they would find their parking lot or parking spot. And to get to this dungeon, it was, I think, let me think, it was on the second floor or third floor. Oh, it was on the third floor. So to walk up the flight of stairs, people would say, "Oh, those stairs, those stairs." They would remember the stairs, but they still made it. And now the whole entire building is gone. They tore it down and they built an office building. So you can't even recognize, but the memories are still there. And the last place, the other dungeon in Chicago, luckily there was a parking lot. And the city of Chicago would have a rule where if you're parked in the street from like 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., we're going to tow you or something. So I remember one party at the end of the party, because the parties went from like 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And I told everybody at about 2:30, okay, the party's over, because they're going to be, towing the cars at 3. So everybody, please gather your belongings. You got to go. So there was about like 4 or 5 of us still chit-chatting, and we just lost track of time. And then 3:03 or 3:05 a.m. hits. The tow trucks were out there. And they started towing our cars. It's a true story. And I'm like, oh my God. So that costs, I don't even remember what the price was, but it was it was disastrous. So the city of Chicago is just so shady like that. It's like they could have gave us an extra 5 or 10 minutes to move the cars, but nope. Right at like 3 a.m., 3:05 a.m., they started towing. Anyways, let me get back to the book. All right. The parties welcomed all walks of life. The parties lasted from 2006 to 2015. Why I decided to throw the parties? To get the community together, full of like-minded individuals, to express our individuality, to be our true selves. It was a welcoming environment as long as people respected one another. I was the party organizer, promoter, hostess, and performer at each event. Each event, I had other guest performers, guest DJs, guest photographers showcase their work. I've performed countless amounts of demos in front of thousands of eyes during the 9-year span of throwing parties. People were mesmerized by what they had witnessed. Overall, the parties were a lot of fun. Each month, I created a flyer that featured the theme of the party. I had a list of regulars and would email them invites. Some would respond, and some considered my emails as spam. I was all about marketing this event, either by email, social media, or giving out flyers. I wanted people in Chicago and neighboring states to attend, and they did. If someone from LA, New York, Canada, or even Europe had to travel to Chicago for business, they would look up fetish events in Chicago, and they would come across my event. I was fortunate enough to have thousands of people at the events, whether they were regulars or just people who were curious to check out the scene. Each event involved performances, people dressed in fetish attire, dancing, and mingling. Several people wanted to perform, put on their demos, model for the photographers, or hook up with one another. It was a kinky paradise for some and an experiment for others. All walks of life were there, which were mistresses, masters, slaves, submissives, switches, kinksters, fetishists, couples, singles, voyeurs, exhibitionists, and vanilla individuals. They were all welcome. Everyone had something in common. They all wanted to have a good time. Some people were just so drawn to the event to the point where they wouldn't miss a party. And some people wanted to try it once, attend an underground party, and then I would never see them again. I recall mentioning a semi-strict dress code in the emails to partygoers. Dress up for the event. Blue jeans are not allowed. Dress in fetish attire, latex, leather, PVC, fishnets, lingerie, costumes, or wear all black. Play. People were not obligated to play, but for those who wanted to play, they had to bring their own toys. Most events, I would want to watch the action too. The sound of either someone moaning, screaming, or laughing typically filled the room. If people had fun at my event, then I had fun. Some partygoers would just stand there and watch the room filled with kink. It was avant-garde. It was a thrill. It brought people out of their comfort zone. Then they were there to get kinky in front of other partygoers, and they weren't ashamed of it. And then in 2015, I abruptly stopped the events. I was burnt out by all the responsibilities of throwing the events. I was burnt out by having to stay up late. I thought to myself, maybe I will throw events in New York City, or maybe not. You know what they say, never say never. Not reading from the book. I'm not going to throw any events in New York. It's just a lot of work. I have other projects. I have other things going on, and it's just not going to happen. I thought about it though, but it's just a lot of work, to be honest. Okay, going back to the book. Okay. Let me turn the page. Oh, not reading from the book. Also, the marketing. Yeah, being a promoter and designing the website for the parties and all that. It was a lot of work for sure. A lot of responsibilities. And then to host the event for 4 or 5 hours. And it was just all like, it went by so fast. The party nights that would occur, the time flies when you're having fun. That's what they say. So, event positives. Single people would hook up with one another. The smiles on many faces brought joy to the event. I recall that either one or two couples became married, actually. They met their significant other at one of the events. Another positive, if it were 0 degrees outside, people would still attend. People were grateful to be welcomed at my event. They all enjoyed the atmosphere, the music, the eye candy, the performance art, and being surrounded by other like-minded individuals. In another way where couples can spice up their own sex life. I thrived on good vibes only, drama-free atmosphere. And I became friends with some of the party guests as well. Event negatives. This was rare. I have had toys disappear and drama occur amongst a couple of the party guests. Another rare moment during a couple of events, I caught a man masturbating to the eye candy in the room. He was escorted out immediately. Or another man was caught taking unauthorized photos with his cell phone. He was escorted out immediately as well. Another moment, my ex at the time wanted to fight a performer because I asked the performer to give me a shoulder massage and he was happy to do so. When my ex witnessed this, he charged at him. And then I hid in the bathroom crying. I've had coworkers run into other coworkers. One event, a girl actually passed out and wouldn't wake up. She consumed too much alcohol. I had our doorman call the paramedics, and luckily she was okay. Another event, a party guest participated in Shibari bondage demo. She was in bondage for about 30 minutes, and spectators couldn't take their eyes off of the demo. Then she was let out of the bondage, and she stated that her arm had fallen asleep. She had to go to the doctor and had a pinched nerve from this. And back in 2006 to 2008, there were public events being held at public clubs. There were 21 and over only clubs. I recall the club manager sneaking in a couple of 19 to 20-year-olds. I would find this out after the party. The club manager wouldn't tell me during the event because he knew that I would ask them to leave. The very first event I hosted was in June of 2006. I promoted the event, made flyers, created the website, hosted the event, played with a couple of people at the event, organized the event. It was pretty much do-it-yourself. Too much work, but it was so much fun. Back then, the club was nice enough to store my gear. I had a dog cage, a St. Andrew's cross, chains, etc. We had a dance floor for those who wanted to dance and a small stage for the performers. The events consisted of dancing, playing, mingling, drinking, performances. Each month, it would have a guest performer. So not reading from the book. So I think of the negatives because I'm like, fuck, that's fucking terrible. This woman, it was her birthday and she had too much alcohol and she had passed out. And basically it was like a nightmare. I was so worried about her, and thankfully she was okay. And I never saw her again. And her partner that she had gone with there, I've never seen him again. And I don't know if they were embarrassed or whatnot, but after that, I'm like, that is it. No alcohol at these events. No freaking way. And the club owner of this private dungeon, they were cool about the alcohol. And I wasn't. Because alcohol and play just don't go hand in hand whatsoever. And also the story about the woman in bondage for half an hour. She was in Shibari. She should have said, hey, something's not right. My arm is numb. My arm is, asleep. And I felt like terrible that like she had this pinched nerve for a couple of weeks. And communication is key for sure. And I think they were just so enjoying the moment and having all these spectators watching the bondage. And regarding the guy taking photos without permission, that's just not cool. I remember being approached by a party goer, and she said, hey, he took my photo without my consent. And so he denied it. He wouldn't even show me the cell phone, because I confronted him. I'm like, hey, let me see your cell phone. You took a photo without her permission? Let me see your phone. And then I'm like, okay, you gotta go. You won't, you gotta go. So respect is everything. Respect is key. And oh, I just remembered another incident where at our dungeon in the bathroom, there were women smoking weed, although it was a rule that people could smoke outside only, but these women were just smoking weed inside the bathroom. And we're like, you gotta go. You gotta go. That's just, it's disrespect. Uh, and the masturbator, oh my gosh. This guy, oh my God. I we're like, yeah, you gotta go. That's just so disrespectful to just whip it out and start masturbating. I mean, who does that? He just thought, oh, I could just masturbate. Like, who the fuck does that? So he was never allowed again back at the parties. And I remember that. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? That's fucked up. That's disrespectful. Okay. So the first party, June of 2006, back to the book. June of 2006 was to test the waters to see how many people would attend. We had a good crowd. I remember playing and dripping of sweat. The air conditioner was not working well. Back then, people smoked inside the nightclub, which sucked because I would cough from the cigarette smoke. I would always hope to not go into a coughing fit. Overall, the fetish party at the club was so much fun. That's what Chicago needs, a big, supportive, amazing fetish scene. At the party, I played with my volunteers. One was a red-headed woman who wanted everyone to see her get spanked by yours truly. It turned out to be quite an erotic yet sensual scene. Then mummification, gas masks, breath play, nipple torture, etc. I got pretty excited. I wouldn't mind playing with more ladies. I had worn my blue latex dress and feeling even more sexy. So yeah, not reading from the book. Being in a poorly conditioned area while wearing latex in the summertime is just not pleasant. Like, when I personally wear like latex in the spring or summertime in a club, I want the club to have air conditioner